Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. If you're watching this video, chances are you've either experienced family drama yourself, or you're about to hear a story that will make you appreciate your own family dynamics a little bit more. Before I dive into what happened, I want you to know that this isn't just a story about a wedding gone wrong. This is about manipulation, family loyalty, and ultimately, learning to stand up for yourself when the people who should love you most decide you're not worth protecting. If any part of this resonates with you, please drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe because sharing these stories, as painful as they are, helps all of us feel less alone in our struggles. So, let me start from the beginning. My name is Sarah, and I have a younger sister named Emma. Growing up, I was always the responsible older sister, you know the type. While Emma was painting watercolors and writing poetry, I was the one making sure homework got done, that we didn't miss the school bus, and later that college applications were submitted on time. Our family dynamic was, let's call it, clearly defined. My mother, Patricia, never tried to hide her favoritism. Emma was the golden child, artistic, bubbly, the kind of daughter who made our mother feel proud at social gatherings. I was the practical one, the responsible one, which in my family was code for the one who takes care of everything. My father, David, well, he's a good man, but he's what you might call a peacekeeper. And by peacekeeper, I mean he would rather pretend problems don't exist than address them head on. Whenever Mom's behavior would cross a line, Dad would find something else to focus on. Work, the newspaper, suddenly needing to fix something in the garage. And me? I became the family's unofficial problem solver by default. When the roof leaked, I called the contractors. When bills piled up, I quietly covered the shortfalls from my own savings. When Emma needed help with her art history degree and my parents couldn't afford the full tuition, guess who stepped in? I didn't mind, though, honestly, I found purpose in helping Emma achieve her dreams. I worked my way up to become a financial consultant at a prestigious firm in Boston, and the irony wasn't lost on me that while I was managing multi-million-dollar portfolios for my clients, I was still managing my family's finances too. Now, you might be thinking, Sarah, why didn't you just stop enabling them? And trust me, that thought has crossed my mind about 1,000 times since this all happened. But when you're raised in a family where your value is tied to what you can provide, it becomes second nature. You don't even realize you're doing it until someone points it out, or until it all blows up in your face. Which brings me to 3 years ago, when Emma met someone who would change everything. His name was Michael Thompson, and they met at an art gallery opening downtown. Michael came from a wealthy family, but he wasn't flashy about it. He genuinely appreciated Emma's artistic perspective and supported her career ambitions in a way that was refreshing to see. I liked him immediately. He was kind, thoughtful, and most importantly, he made my sister happy. Their relationship developed naturally over 2 years, and honestly, none of us were surprised when Michael proposed. Emma called me first, before even telling our parents, screaming with excitement through the phone. Sarah, he proposed. You're going to be my maid of honor, right? I can't do this without you. Her voice was bubbling with pure joy that December morning, and I felt my heart swell with happiness for her. Of course I will, I promised immediately, already mentally planning how I could help make her wedding dreams come true. This was going to be amazing. We were going to plan the perfect wedding together, just like we'd talked about since we were teenagers. Those initial planning stages were everything I'd imagined they would be. Emma and I spent weekends browsing venues, discussing color schemes, and creating Pinterest boards filled with inspiration. I took detailed notes during every conversation because I wanted to make sure her vision became reality. My apartment slowly transformed into Wedding Central. Bridal magazines covered my coffee table. Fabric swatches were pinned to a corkboard on my wall. During one of our planning sessions, Emma mentioned how she'd always dreamed of getting married somewhere elegant but not stuffy. You know, somewhere with character but also sophistication, she said, flipping through a venue magazine. I made a note to research historic hotels and manor houses in the area. This was exactly the kind of detail work I was good at, and I loved being able to help my sister find exactly what she was looking for. But then came the first sign that this fairy tale planning experience was about to take a very different turn. It happened during what should have been a routine family dinner to discuss wedding budgets. We were all gathered around my parents' dining table: Emma, Michael, my parents, and me. Mom had been unusually quiet during dinner, which should have been my first warning sign. Patricia is never quiet when there's an event to plan. Just as we were finishing our salads, Mom disappeared for a moment and returned with a leather-bound wedding planner I'd never seen before. She set it down on the table with the kind of authority that immediately shifted the entire energy of the room. "I've already put deposits down on the Carlton Manor," she announced before anyone had even asked about venues. They only had one date available this summer, so I had to move quickly. Emma looked surprised, but pleased. "Mom, that's so generous, but Sarah and I were still comparing venues." "Darling," Mom interrupted, patting Emma's hand while shooting me a look that I can only describe as triumphant. "The Carlton books up a year in advance. We're lucky they had a cancellation. Besides, I've always imagined your wedding there." Michael looked between Emma and me, clearly sensing some tension but not sure what was happening. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to stay diplomatic. "That's wonderful that you found a great venue." "Mom," I said carefully. "Emma, is this the style you were hoping for?" "Oh, it's beautiful," Emma said, looking through the photos Mom had brought. "I mean, we hadn't seen it yet, but the pictures are gorgeous." And just like that, the first major wedding decision was made without any input from Emma or me. But I told myself it was fine. Mom was contributing financially, and she was excited to help. Surely this was just enthusiasm, not a power grab. I was so naive. Within 2 weeks, it became clear that my mother had not just offered to help, she had essentially staged a hostile takeover of Emma's wedding. Vendors that I had researched and Emma had been excited about were suddenly dismissed in favor of Mom's friends' recommendations. The color scheme Emma and I had spent hours perfecting was declared too drab and replaced with something much more elaborate. When I expressed concern to Emma about these changes, she would just shrug and say, "Mom's really enjoying this, and it makes planning easier. Plus, she and Dad are contributing a lot financially." I bit my tongue and stepped back, still helping where I could, but increasingly feeling like an outsider looking in. And that's when I started noticing that someone else was taking my place in the wedding photos that kept appearing on social media. Her name was Chloe, Emma's cousin from Mom's side of the family. Chloe had always been someone who liked to be part of the inner circle at family events. But now she was suddenly accompanying Emma and Mom to vendor meetings that I hadn't even been invited to. I remember the exact moment it hit me. I was scrolling through Instagram one evening, and there was a photo of Chloe holding color swatches against bridesmaid dress options. She was standing in what looked like a bridal boutique, with Emma and Mom flanking her, all three of them smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Bridesmaid dress shopping with my girls. So excited for Emma's big day." I stared at that photo for probably 10 minutes, trying to understand what I was seeing. Wasn't bridesmaid dress selection something the maid of honor typically helped with? Hadn't Emma and I talked about going dress shopping together? I mentioned it casually to my boyfriend Tyler that night. "Emma seems to be getting closer to Chloe these days," I said, showing him the Instagram post. Tyler, who's always been the voice of reason in my life, looked at the photo and then at me. Maybe it's just because Chloe has more free time right now? You've been slammed at work this quarter. He was right. I had been working on a particularly complex portfolio restructure that was consuming most of my evenings and weekends. I told myself that's all it was. Emma was just including whoever was available. But as spring progressed, something more troubling started happening. The invitations to planning events stopped coming altogether. When I would call Emma to check in about wedding details, her responses became increasingly vague and rushed. "How's the menu tasting going?" I'd ask. "Oh, Mom's handling all that," she'd reply quickly. "Already figured it out." "What about the music? Did you decide on a DJ or live band?" "Mom found this great string quartet through a friend. It's all set." Every conversation felt like I was trying to get information about someone else's wedding, not my sister's. The detailed discussions about centerpieces and music selections that I'd been looking forward to were replaced with quick text responses. "Mom's got it covered," or "already decided." Meanwhile, I was still contributing financially to various elements of the wedding. When Emma mentioned loving a particular photographer but Mom thinking he was too expensive, I quietly paid his deposit, $2,500. When Mom decided the out-of-town guests needed welcome baskets, I arranged and paid for custom ones filled with local treats and thoughtful touches, $800. I also started planning what I hoped would be the perfect wedding gift, a luxury honeymoon to Bali. I spent hours researching the most romantic resorts, arranging first-class flights, and booking a private villa with ocean views. The total cost was over $8,000, but I wanted to give Emma and Michael something truly special, something that would show how much their happiness meant to me. I imagined presenting them with the surprise at the rehearsal dinner, pictured Emma's face lighting up, and maybe, just maybe, our sisterly bond returning to what it used to be. But that bond was fracturing more every day, and I was about to discover just how deliberately it was being broken. The moment everything clicked into place was when I discovered I wasn't invited to Emma's wedding dress shopping, and I didn't find out from Emma. I found out through my coworker, Jessica, who happened to be friends with the boutique owner. "How was Emma's appointment yesterday?" Jessica asked during our lunch break, her eyes bright with excitement. "Miranda mentioned your sister found the one right away." I felt like the world had tilted sideways. "What appointment?" Jessica's expression immediately shifted from excited to uncomfortable, and I could see her mentally replaying her words, realizing she'd stepped into something awkward. "Oh, at Elegant Moments. Miranda said your sister, and cousin had champagne and spent hours there trying on dresses. I just assumed you were there, too." I mumbled something about a last-minute work emergency and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stared at my reflection in the mirror and tried to process what I'd just learned. Emma had gone wedding dress shopping, the moment we'd been planning and talking about since we were teenagers playing dress-up with our grandmother's curtains, and she hadn't even told me it was happening. That evening, I called Emma, working hard to keep my voice neutral and non-accusatory. "Hey, how was your day? Did you get up to anything fun?" There was a pause before she answered. "Oh, just some errands. Nothing exciting." I waited, giving her a chance to mention the dress shopping on her own. When she didn't, I took a deep breath. "So, how was the dress appointment today?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh, it just happened really fast. Mom had an appointment and it wasn't supposed to be the actual shopping day, just a preliminary look. Chloe was free and we needed a third opinion." "I could have made myself free," I said quietly. "You could have asked." "Sarah, don't make this a big deal," Emma replied, and I could hear the defensiveness creeping into her voice. "There will be plenty of other wedding stuff you can be part of." But there wasn't plenty of other wedding stuff. The bridal shower was organized without my input, though I was asked to contribute financially to the venue. The bachelorette party planning was completely taken over by Chloe, who chose a destination spa weekend that I knew Emma wouldn't really enjoy. She's never been much for spa treatments, preferring active adventures like hiking or kayaking. When I offered suggestions based on 30 years of knowing my sister's preferences, they were dismissed as not what Emma wants anymore. She's really excited about the spa weekend, Chloe told me when I mentioned that Emma had always said she found spa days boring. People change, you know. Emma's becoming more sophisticated now that she's getting married. More sophisticated? This was my sister who preferred camping to 5-star hotels, who would rather spend a Saturday hiking than getting a facial. But apparently, I didn't know the new Emma. Through all of this, I continued supporting from the shadows. I finalized the honeymoon arrangements, booking first-class flights to Bali, securing a private villa with an infinity pool overlooking the ocean, and arranging special experiences like a private cooking class and a sunset cruise. Every detail was planned with Emma and Michael's personalities in mind. The adventures Emma would love, the romantic touches that would make Michael smile. Meanwhile, the distance between Emma and me continued to grow. She started declining our traditional Sunday brunches, always with a different excuse. When we did see each other, Mom was usually there, controlling the conversation and later interpreting everything I said in the worst possible light. "Is everything okay between us?" I finally asked Emma directly after 3 weeks of increasingly sporadic communication. We were at a family barbecue, sitting on the back porch while everyone else was inside. "Everything's fine," she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm just super busy with wedding stuff. Mom's been amazing, handling all the details." That phrase, "Mom's been amazing," was becoming Emma's standard response to everything. And maybe that should have been my clue that Mom was doing more than just handling details. In May, just 2 months before the wedding, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I had stepped into the kitchen to refill my water glass during another family gathering when I heard my name being mentioned in the dining room. The voices were clear, and they weren't trying to be quiet. Sarah's always been difficult. My mother's voice carried through the doorway. Emma's finally seeing it now. "It must be so hard for Emma," Chloe responded, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Always having to deal with someone who needs to control everything, especially during her wedding when she should be the center of attention." "Exactly," Mom continued. "That's why we've had to minimize her involvement. For Emma's sake." I stood frozen in that kitchen, water overflowing from my glass onto the counter as their words sank in. My own mother was actively working to exclude me from my sister's wedding, and she was painting me as some sort of attention-seeking monster to justify it. That night, I broke down to Tyler, finally voicing the fears I'd been suppressing for months. "What if they don't even want me at the wedding anymore?" I sobbed into his shoulder. "What if all this distancing is leading to something worse?" Tyler held me tight, his voice steady and reassuring. "That's not possible, Sarah. You're Emma's sister, and you've done nothing but support her. Your mom is just... She's controlling, but she can't actually ban you from your sister's wedding. You don't know how persuasive she can be," I whispered. "How she twists things? What if she's convinced Emma that I'm the problem? Then you need to talk to Emma directly." Tyler said firmly, "No more guessing. No more hoping it will get better on its own. You need to have a real conversation about what's happening." He was right. The situation had deteriorated too far for passive acceptance. I needed to know where I stood, and I needed to hear it directly from Emma. I texted her the next morning. "We need to talk about the wedding and our relationship. Can we meet this week?" Her response came hours later. Really busy with wedding stuff. Come to Mom and Dad's on Thursday at 7. We can talk then. Those 5 days felt like the longest of my life. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would calmly express my hurt without sounding accusatory. I reminded myself that Emma might be caught in the middle, pressured by Mom's strong personality and elaborate wedding plans. I arrived at my parents' colonial-style house that Thursday evening with my heart full of hope for reconciliation and clarity. The same driveway where Emma and I had learned to ride bikes, where we'd played basketball until the streetlights came on, now felt like foreign territory. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush that would shatter my relationship with my family and force me to redefine what love, loyalty, and self-respect truly meant. The evening air was unusually still as I parked outside the house. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, straightened my blazer, and took a deep breath before heading to the front door. Mom answered before I could even ring the bell, her expression unreadable. "We're in the living room," she said curtly, turning without waiting for my response. The scene inside felt staged, like walking onto a movie set where everyone knew their lines except me. Dad sat in his usual armchair, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. Emma perched on the edge of the sofa, fingers twisting in her lap, her eyes focused on the coffee table. Mom positioned herself standing behind Emma, one hand on the sofa back in what looked like a protective stance. And there, in what had always been my spot during family discussions, sat Chloe, looking simultaneously smug and concerned. "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing when no one offered me a seat. "Emma, I thought we were going to talk about the wedding." "That's why we're all here," Mom interjected before Emma could speak. "There's something you need to understand about the wedding." A strange stillness settled over me, like the calm before a storm I could feel approaching but couldn't yet see. "We've been discussing things," Mom continued, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she'd perfected over decades of family management. "And we all agreed that your involvement in the wedding has become problematic." "Problematic," I echoed, looking directly at Emma, who still wouldn't meet my gaze. "Your controlling behavior," Mom said, ticking off points on her fingers like items on a grocery list. "Your need to make everything about yourself. The way you've tried to overshadow Emma's special time with your opinions and your financial contributions." I felt like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. "Emma," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "is this how you feel?" She finally looked up, her expression a mixture of guilt and rehearsed resolve. "It's just been really stressful, Sarah. Every time you get involved, there's tension." "Mom thinks," she started to say. "Mom thinks what?" I interrupted softly. "What do you think, Emma?" Before she could answer, Mom stepped forward, placing herself partially between us. "What Emma thinks is that her wedding should be a happy occasion. And frankly, your presence would make that impossible." The room seemed to tilt slightly as her words registered. "My presence at the planning, you mean?" Mom's lips curved into what can only be described as a smirk, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes at finally delivering the blow she'd been orchestrating for months. "We all agreed," she said, enunciating each word like she was savoring fine wine. "You're not welcome at the wedding." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the antique clock on the mantel ticking, marking seconds in a moment that felt endless. "Not as maid of honor, not as a bridesmaid, not as a guest," Mom continued. "It's better for everyone this way." Dad shifted in his chair but said nothing. Chloe had the decency to look at the floor. And Emma, my sister, my best friend since her first breath, sat in complicit silence. effectively ending 30 years of sisterhood with her refusal to speak. "I see," I said finally, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "And when was this decision made?" "We've been moving in this direction for months," Mom replied, clearly pleased by my calm reaction, mistaking shock for acceptance. "Emma asked Chloe to be her maid of honor weeks ago. We just needed to make it official." I turned to Chloe, who now met my gaze with a challenging look. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "It's nothing personal," she replied, the lie transparent enough to be almost insulting. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Nothing personal about replacing me in my sister's wedding, in my sister's life. "Emma," I tried one more time, my voice barely audible. "Is this really what you want?" But Mom answered again. "Emma wants a drama-free wedding. You've always been too controlling, too opinionated. Everything has to be your way. That's not true, and you know it," I said, feeling the first crack in my composed facade. "I've supported every decision, even when I wasn't consulted. I've contributed thousands of dollars without being asked. See, there it is." Mom pointed accusingly. "Throwing your money in our faces, using your financial contributions to control the wedding. That's exactly why you can't be there." I looked at my father, silently pleading for him to say something, anything. He met my eyes briefly, then looked away, his lifelong pattern of avoiding conflict winning out even now. A strange calm settled over me then, a clarity cutting through the hurt and confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a heart-to-heart conversation. This was a carefully orchestrated exclusion, months in the making. "Good to know," I said simply. I turned and walked toward the door, my movements mechanical. Behind me, I heard Emma call my name once, softly, but no footsteps followed. No one tried to stop me. And that's where I'm going to pause this story for now, because what happened next, the aftermath, the discoveries, the way everything unraveled and then slowly rebuilt itself, that's going to take some time to tell properly. If you're still with me, thank you for listening. I know this is heavy, and I know it might bring up your own family experiences. In the comments, let me know. Have you ever felt excluded by the people who should love you most? Have you ever been in a situation where you realized someone was systematically turning others against you? Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because part 2 of this story is going to reveal just how deep the manipulation went, and how sometimes the people we think we know best are capable of shocking betrayals. But I promise you, this story doesn't end in defeat. Sometimes, the worst moments in our lives lead to the most important growth. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'm in the middle of telling you about the night my mother looked me in the eyes and told me I wasn't welcome at my own sister's wedding. If you haven't watched part 1, please go back and watch it first, because this story builds on everything that happened in that devastating confrontation. For those of you who've been following along, thank you for all the comments and support. Some of you shared your own stories of family manipulation, and I want you to know that reading them helped me feel less alone in this experience. That's exactly why I'm sharing this, because these painful family dynamics are more common than we want to admit. So let's pick up where we left off. I had just walked out of my parents' house after being told I was banned from Emma's wedding, and I was sitting in my car in their driveway, trying to process what had just happened. The drive home passed in a blur. Streetlights smeared like watercolors as tears I didn't even realize I was crying filled my eyes. I had to pull over twice when the road became too blurry to navigate safely. My phone kept buzzing with incoming texts and calls, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. When I finally reached my apartment, Tyler was waiting for me. He took one look at my face and knew immediately that his prediction had been wrong. They actually had banned me from the wedding. "What happened?" he asked, immediately pulling me into a hug. The whole story poured out in disjointed fragments between sobs. The ambush, Mom's cruel satisfaction, Emma's betrayal, Dad's silence, Chloe's triumph. "They can't do this," Tyler said when I finished, outrage clear in his voice. "You're her sister. You've done nothing but support her." "Apparently, that doesn't matter," I whispered, emotional exhaustion beginning to set in. Mom's been working on this for months, turning Emma against me, making me out to be some kind of villain. "What are you going to do?" Tyler asked, his hand warm against mine. I stared out the window at the city lights below, feeling hollow, yet somehow lighter, as if the worst had happened and now I could begin to rebuild. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I know I deserve better than this." What I didn't realize then was that the confrontation that evening wasn't the end of the story. It was merely the setup for what would come next, both the depths of betrayal I was about to discover and the unexpected path to healing that would follow. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay awake replaying every moment of the scene at my parents' house, analyzing every word, every look, searching for something I might have misunderstood. But there was no ambiguity in my mother's satisfied smirk as she delivered her verdict. This was exactly what she had wanted. By 4 a.m., I'd given up on sleep entirely. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold beside me and began to catalog everything I had contributed to Emma's wedding. The numbers were staggering when I laid them all out. The photographer deposit, $2,500. Custom welcome baskets for out-of-town guests, $800. The string quartet I'd arranged as a surprise for the ceremony, $200. And then there were the smaller expenses. The vintage hairpin I'd found that matched Emma's grandmother's earrings, the calligrapher I'd hired for the place cards after Emma mentioned loving hand lettering, and the honeymoon, the crown jewel of my gifts to Emma and Michael. First-class flights to Bali, $4,200. The private villa with ocean views, $3,800. The special experiences I'd arranged, private cooking class, sunset cruise, guided trek to hidden waterfalls, $600. All told, I'd contributed over $15,000 to a wedding I was now banned from attending. As the first light of dawn broke through my kitchen window, I made my decision. I opened my laptop and navigated to my banking app. With steady fingers, I transferred the $8,600 honeymoon fund back to my personal account. Next, I logged into the airline and resort websites, methodically canceling each reservation. My phone had been buzzing intermittently throughout the night with incoming messages, but I hadn't looked at it. Now, I finally checked the notifications. 3 missed calls from Emma, 12 from Mom, even 1 from Dad, which was unusual. The texts ranged from Mom's defensive, "You're making this all about you again," to accusatory, "After everything we've done for you." Nothing that indicated remorse or reconsideration. I made one last call to my credit card company. "I need to report some unauthorized charges." I explained to the representative, "Family members have been making purchases without my permission." It wasn't entirely accurate, but it wasn't entirely untrue either. I'd never explicitly authorized my mother to use my card information for the additional wedding favors she'd ordered last month, or the upgraded linens she'd insisted upon. By 7 a.m., I'd methodically untangled my financial ties to Emma's wedding. I sent a brief email to my boss explaining I needed a personal day, then turned off my phone completely. The sudden silence felt both terrifying and liberating. I spent the morning walking through the Boston Common, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. The betrayal felt physical, an actual ache beneath my ribs that intensified with each breath. Emma and I had shared everything for 30 years. How could she sit silently while Mom banished me from her wedding? How could she replace me with Chloe, of all people? Around noon, I met my best friend Olivia for lunch. I hadn't planned to tell her everything, but one look at my face and she knew something was catastrophically wrong. "They did what?" she exclaimed when I finished explaining, loud enough that neighboring tables turned to look. "Your own mother said that to your face?" I nodded, pushing salad around my plate without eating. "And Emma just sat there and said nothing?" "She tried to speak once or twice, but Mom kept interrupting, and Emma didn't stop any of it." I trailed off, the hurt still too raw to articulate fully. Olivia reached for my hand across the table. "Sarah, there's something you should know. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want to upset you, but now I think you need to hear it." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Your mom has been saying things about you for months now." Olivia looked uncomfortable. "At Emma's engagement party, she told my mother that you were jealous of Emma's happiness. And at the Williams dinner party last month, she mentioned how concerned everyone was about your fragile emotional state and how the family was walking on eggshells around you." I stared at her, stunned. "What? Why would she say that?" "I don't know, but she's been planting these little seeds with everyone in your social circle. Small comments, concerned looks, nothing direct enough to seem malicious, just enough to create this impression that you're unstable somehow. Difficult." My mother's voice echoed in my memory. "Your controlling behavior, your need to make everything about yourself." She hadn't just been turning Emma against me. She'd been systematically undermining me with everyone we knew. "But why?" I whispered, more to myself than to Olivia. "Control." Olivia said simply, "You're successful, independent, financially stable. You have what she never did. My mom always said your mother seemed jealous of you, even when we were kids." The pieces began falling into place, illuminating decades of small cruelties and manipulations I'd normalized or excused. The times Mom had forgotten to tell me about family events, the backhanded compliments about my career. "It's amazing you've done so well without a husband to support you." The way she subtly reminded Emma of every childhood slight, while glossing over everything I'd done to support and protect my sister. "I've been so blind," I said, finally. "You've been a daughter who wanted to believe the best about her mother." Olivia corrected gently. "That's not blindness. That's love." By the time I returned home that afternoon, I felt different. Still hurt, but clearer about what was happening and what I needed to do. I turned my phone back on and watched as notifications flooded in. 28 missed calls total, voicemails ranging from my mother's cold fury to my father's uncomfortable attempts at peacemaking, and one message from Emma sent at 3:42 a.m. that changed everything. "I'm so sorry. Sarah, Mom's been lying to me about you for months. Michael and I just found out what she did with the honeymoon reservations. Please call me, please. I need my sister back." I stared at Emma's message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the call button. The raw emotion in her text felt genuine, but after months of manipulation and the previous night's brutal confrontation, I wasn't ready to dive back into the chaos without understanding more. The other messages painted a picture of family implosion. Mom's voicemails evolved from righteously indignant, "How dare you cancel the honeymoon after promising it as a gift," to threatening, "You've left me no choice but to tell everyone about your behavior," to an unconvincing attempt at reconciliation. "We can still fix this if you apologize." Dad's messages were fewer and more subdued. "Your mother is very upset," he said in one background noise, suggesting he was calling from his car to avoid being overheard. "I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. Please call when you can." Other family members had begun weighing in too. My Uncle Robert, always Mom's ally, left a stern lecture about respecting parents. My grandmother asked in her wavering voice if I was feeling all right, clearly having received Mom's version of events. But there were unexpected supporters too. Aunt Catherine, who rarely involved herself in family drama, left a surprisingly forceful message. "I've watched your mother do this before. Sarah. She did the same thing to me with your father. Call me. We need to talk." I decided to start there, calling my father's sister back first. "Oh, Sarah," Aunt Catherine's warm voice filled the line immediately. "I've been so worried. Are you all right?" "Not really," I admitted. "I don't understand what's happening, Aunt Cath. Why would Mom do this?" "Because you threaten her," she said simply. "You always have. Since you were little, so capable, so independent, Patricia needs to be needed, to control everything. When that's challenged, she reacts. By turning my sister against me? By banning me from the wedding? It's what she does." Catherine sighed. "She did the same thing to me when I was your age. Your father and I were always close. But when he met Patricia, things changed. She created conflicts that didn't exist, told your father I'd said terrible things about her. By their wedding, I wasn't welcome either." I sat down heavily, processing this revelation. Dad never told me that. David has always chosen peace over confrontation, especially with your mother. We eventually reconciled, but only years later, and never like before. Her voice softened. "But this isn't about old history. This is about stopping the pattern now, before your relationship with Emma is permanently damaged." Or, after speaking with Catherine, I called my college best friend Andrea, who worked as a therapist. Without breaking confidentiality, she helped me understand the dynamics at play. "What you're describing sounds like narcissistic manipulation," she explained. "Triangulation, gaslighting, the golden child scapegoat dynamic. The most important thing is protecting your own boundaries while leaving room for Emma to find her way back. Remember, she's been manipulated too." I was still processing this advice when my phone rang again. It was Michael, Emma's fiancé. "Sarah." He sounded genuinely distressed. "Thank God you answered. It's been chaos here. Emma's been crying for hours." "What happened, Michael?" I kept my voice neutral, not ready to extend trust yet. "We found out what your mother's been doing, the lies she's been telling, the emails she altered. Sarah, Emma never knew you were excluded from dress shopping. Your mom told her you couldn't make it, showed her texts from you canceling." "What? I never sent any texts canceling anything." "We know that now. Your mother apparently created fake conversations to show Emma, making it look like you were too busy or didn't care about wedding activities." His voice hardened. "When we confronted her, she admitted to changing the names in the contact list on Emma's phone, too, routing some of your texts to her own phone. The level of deliberate manipulation was staggering. But there was something I needed to know. Why are you telling me this, Michael? Why isn't Emma calling herself?" "Because she's terrified you'll never speak to her again. And because," he hesitated, "your mother showed up at our apartment last night after you left. She was not well, screaming about ungrateful children, demanding we choose sides. It got bad enough that neighbors called building security. The situation was spiraling faster than I could process. Michael, I need time to think. This is all too much." "I understand. Just don't shut the door completely, okay? Emma loves you. She's been manipulated too. I promised nothing but said I'd be in touch soon. I barely had time to absorb this conversation before my work phone rang. It was Sandra, our office receptionist. "Sarah, I hate to bother you on your day off, but there's a situation here. Your mother arrived about 20 minutes ago demanding to see you. When I explained you weren't in, she's causing quite a scene in the lobby. My professional and personal worlds were colliding in the worst possible way. What is she doing exactly? Making accusations, telling anyone who will listen that you've stolen money from her, that you're experiencing some kind of breakdown. Sandra lowered her voice. Mr. Daniels is trying to handle it, but she's becoming increasingly erratic. I'll be right there, I said, grabbing my keys. The 15-minute drive to my office felt like entering a battle zone. Mom had never visited my workplace before, had shown minimal interest in my career beyond how it benefited the family financially. Now she was there, deliberately targeting the professional reputation I'd spent years building. I arrived to find security escorting my mother from the building, her voice carrying across the lobby. You don't know what she's capable of. She's always been troubled. The embarrassment was acute, burning across my face as colleagues watched the scene unfold. Mr. Daniels, my direct supervisor, approached with concern. Sarah, take whatever time you need to handle this personal matter. Your work speaks for itself. No one here is paying attention to unfounded accusations. His support should have been comforting, but the public spectacle left me feeling exposed and violated. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. Mom was actively trying to destroy the foundations of my life, my reputation, my relationships, my career. As security guided my mother to the parking lot, her eyes locked with mine across the lobby. Instead of the remorse or shame one might expect, I saw only cold fury and something worse, satisfaction at having disrupted my carefully ordered world. In that moment, something shifted within me. The hurt child seeking maternal approval disappeared, replaced by a clear-eyed adult who could finally see the pattern of manipulation for what it was. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was abuse, and it had gone on long enough. I returned to my apartment and made a decision. It was time to address this situation once and for all, not with emotional reactions, but with calm, irrefutable truth. I would meet with Emma and anyone else involved to lay out exactly what had happened and establish boundaries that would protect my well-being going forward. 2 days later, I sat at a corner table in a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and Emma's. I'd arrived early to settle my nerves, arranging printed evidence in a folder beside me, screenshots of original texts that contradicted Mom's fabricated ones, email confirmations of wedding arrangements I'd made, bank statements showing my financial contributions. Emma arrived alone, looking smaller somehow, her usual confidence diminished. Dark circles beneath her eyes matched my own. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, sliding into the chair opposite me. "Is Michael joining us?" I asked, having expected him after our phone conversation. "He's parking the car. I wanted a few minutes with just you first." Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged her purse beside her. "Sarah, I don't even know where to begin." I waited, giving her space to find her words. I believed her. Emma finally said, voice breaking, "All these months, Mom has been showing me texts from you, canceling plans, telling me you thought my wedding choices were tacky, that you were too busy with your important career to be bothered with wedding details." Tears spilled onto her cheeks. I believed her because it was easier than thinking my mother would lie so completely, so deliberately. "She showed you fake texts?" I asked, still struggling to comprehend the extent of the deception. Emma nodded, pulling out her phone. "Michael figured it out. Look at this." She showed me her messaging app, scrolling to conversations with me. Except they weren't my words at all. Messages dismissing wedding plans, complaining about costs, making snide remarks about her choices. All attributed to my number, but written in a voice nothing like mine. Mom had access to my phone, Emma explained. She created a contact with her number. But your name, when I thought I was texting you, I was actually texting her. Then she'd respond pretending to be you. Emma wiped her eyes. And she deleted real messages from you. I never received half the things you sent me. The methodical nature of the deception was staggering. But what about when we saw each other in person? Surely you could tell something was off. We barely saw each other these past few months. Mom always had an excuse for why you couldn't make it to wedding events. And when we did meet, she was always there, controlling the conversation, interpreting everything you said in the worst possible light afterward. Emma looked up as Michael approached the table, setting down 3 coffees before taking a seat beside Emma. She poisoned everything, Emma whispered. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Michael said, I should have seen what was happening sooner. How did you figure it out? I asked. The honeymoon cancellation was the tipping point, Michael explained. When Emma got the notification, she was confused because she didn't even know about the Bali trip. Your mother claimed you had promised this elaborate honeymoon, but canceled it vindictively after being rightly excluded from the wedding. But that made no sense. Emma interjected. Why would you spend thousands on a honeymoon for us if you were as resentful as Mom claimed? So we started investigating, Michael continued, checking her phone records, comparing timestamps of messages. Once we started looking for inconsistencies, the whole fabrication fell apart. The final proof came when we found a folder on your mother's tablet. She'd actually been keeping screenshots of fake conversations she created, probably to keep her story straight. I pushed my folder across the table. I brought my own evidence, bank transfers, original emails, everything. As Emma and Michael reviewed the documents, their expressions shifted from shock to horror to indignation. The contrast between my actual words and actions versus what my mother had portrayed couldn't have been starker. That day at your parents' house, Michael said, Emma thought we were meeting to clear the air about miscommunications. She had no idea your mother was planning to ban you from the wedding. I froze, Emma admitted, shame evident in her voice. When Mom started saying those terrible things, claiming we'd all agreed, I was in shock. By the time I processed what was happening, you were already gone. Her hand reached for mine across the table. Sarah, I never agreed to exclude you from my wedding. Never. You're my sister, my best friend. I can't get married without you there. The validation brought a rush of emotion I hadn't expected. For months, I'd been gaslighted into questioning my own perceptions, my own worth in my family. We need to talk about Mom, I said once I could trust my voice again. This isn't normal behavior. This is deliberate, calculated manipulation. It gets worse, Michael said grimly. After you left that night, Emma confronted your mother. The things she said, the venom, it was like watching someone transform into a different person. Emma nodded. She admitted to everything, but with no remorse. She said she was protecting me from your negative influence. When I said I wanted you back in the wedding, she threatened to withdraw all financial support and tell everyone in the family I was having a pre-wedding breakdown. Just like what she's been saying about me, I murmured. Exactly. Michael confirmed. It's a pattern she uses to discredit anyone who challenges her. We spent the next hour mapping out the full extent of my mother's manipulation. The altered texts, the diverted invitations, the rumors spread throughout our social circle, the financial control. Each revelation built upon the last, creating a comprehensive picture of calculated emotional abuse spanning decades. I've arranged a meeting, I finally said, With Dad, Aunt Catherine, and a few other family members who need to hear the truth, a neutral family intervention of sorts. When? Emma asked. Tomorrow evening. Will you come? She nodded without hesitation. Of course. It's time everyone knew the truth. The family meeting the following evening was both difficult and necessary. We gathered in Aunt Catherine's living room. Myself, Emma and Michael, Dad, Aunt Catherine, Uncle Paul, and our maternal grandmother Martha, who had specifically asked to be included after receiving concerning calls from Mom. I presented the evidence methodically, without emotion, the fake texts, the financial records, the witness accounts of Mom's public behaviors. Catherine shared similar experiences from decades earlier. Michael described Mom's meltdown at their apartment. Dad sat silent throughout most of the presentation, his face growing increasingly gray as the evidence mounted. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I knew some of it, he admitted. Not the extent, but enough that I should have done something long ago. He looked at me with eyes full of regret. I chose peace over protecting you. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Mom arrived last, having been told this was a wedding budget discussion. Her confident entrance faltered when she saw the assembled group and the evidence spread across the coffee table. What is this? She demanded, eyes darting between faces. A chance for truth, I said simply. What followed was both predictable and painful. Initial denial, accusations of conspiracy against her, attempts to win allies through familiar manipulation tactics. When those failed, rage, cold and cutting, then hot and uncontrolled. Finally, when cornered by irrefutable evidence, tears and claims of misunderstanding, of only wanting what was best for the family. I will not be treated this way, she declared when everyone remained unmoved by her performance. After everything I've done for this family, for Emma's wedding— About the wedding, Emma interrupted, standing to face our mother directly. Sarah will be my maid of honor, as I always wanted. If you can't accept that and behave respectfully toward her, then you will have a severely limited role in both the wedding and our lives going forward. Mom's face contorted with shock. You would choose her over your own mother? I'm choosing truth over manipulation. Emma replied steadily, I'm choosing health over toxicity. Your father will never allow this. Mom turned to Dad, expectation clear in her expression. For perhaps the first time in their marriage, Dad didn't yield to keep the peace. Patricia, enough. Look at what you've done. Look at the evidence. This stops now. The intervention didn't end with a neat resolution. Mom left in a fury, promising consequences for our betrayal. But something fundamental had shifted. The pattern of manipulation had been exposed, named, and rejected by those it was designed to control. The week before Emma's wedding arrived, with a tentative new normal establishing itself within our fractured family. After the intervention, Mom had cycled through various tactics: icy silence, tearful pleas for understanding, rage-filled accusations, and finally a grudging outward acceptance of the new boundaries we'd established. Dad had surprised us all by standing firm in his support of Emma's decision to reinstate me as maid of honor. After decades of choosing peace over confrontation, he seemed to have found a reserve of strength none of us knew he possessed. I should have protected you both long ago, he told me during a private conversation on my apartment balcony. City lights twinkling below us. I convinced myself that saying nothing was the same as keeping the peace. I was wrong. Why now, Dad? I asked gently. What changed? He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment, seeing it all laid out like that, the deliberate nature of it. I couldn't hide from it anymore. And honestly, Sarah, I'm tired. tired of walking on eggshells, tired of pretending everything is fine when it isn't. This new version of my father, willing to acknowledge hard truths, to apologize, to change, gave me hope that genuine transformation might be possible. Emma and I had been rebuilding our relationship day by day, our bond bruised but not broken. We'd spent long hours talking through the manipulations that had driven us apart, grieving the months of sisterhood we'd lost. I keep thinking about what would have happened if Michael hadn't discovered those fake texts, she said during one of our reconciliation brunches. Let's not think about that, I suggested, squeezing her hand across the table. We're here now. As for Mom, the family had presented her with clear conditions. She could participate in the wedding, but her role would be significantly restricted. No more unilateral decisions, no private conversations with vendors, no attempts to isolate or manipulate any family members. And if I refuse these conditions, she'd asked, disdain dripping from every word, then you'll attend as a guest only, with no input on any elements of the ceremony or reception, Emma had stated firmly. To everyone's surprise, Mom had eventually agreed, though her compliance seemed more strategic than genuine. The flashes of resentment in her eyes, quickly masked by artificial pleasantness, told the true story. The wedding day itself arrived sunny and clear, a beautiful contrast to the emotional storms of previous months. I stood proudly beside Emma as her maid of honor, holding her bouquet as she and Michael exchanged vows full of authentic emotion. Mom sat in the front row beside Dad, her composure perfect, her eyes occasionally meeting mine with unreadable emotion. It was during the reception that the most unexpected moment of healing occurred. As guests mingled during cocktail hour, I found myself momentarily alone near the gift table. The calligraphy is beautiful. Mom's voice came from behind me. That was your doing, wasn't it? I turned, braced for criticism disguised as a compliment, but her expression held something I rarely saw directed at me, genuine appreciation. Yes, I answered simply. Emma mentioned loving hand lettering. Mom nodded, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. You've always noticed those details about people, she said finally, her voice lower, less certain. What they love, what matters to them. I never had that gift. The admission, so small yet so significant coming from her, left me momentarily speechless. The therapist Catherine recommended, Mom continued, looking anywhere but at me, says I need to practice acknowledging others' strengths without feeling diminished by them. A brief, humorless laugh. Apparently, I have work to do in that area. You're seeing a therapist? I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. Your father insisted. After everything. She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. I don't expect this to fix things between us. I know that will take time, if it's even possible. But I am trying. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a transformation. But it was a tiny crack in the fortress of denial she'd built around herself. And for that day, that was enough. 1 month after the wedding, our family began tentative group therapy sessions. Mom attended reluctantly at first, then with increasing willingness as the framework gave her acceptable ways to express her needs without manipulation. Dad found his voice gradually, speaking truths long suppressed. Emma and I strengthened our sisterhood, now built on mutual respect rather than codependent patterns. My own healing journey continued independently as well. I established clearer boundaries in all relationships, not just with family. I learned to recognize when my helping veered into unhealthy territory. And most importantly, I began to value myself apart from what I could provide for others. Tyler had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal, his steadfast support never wavering. 6 months after Emma's wedding, during a weekend hike to our favorite mountain overlook, he proposed. Yes, I said without hesitation, but with one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Waiting. Our wedding planning stays between us. Small committee, clear boundaries, no drama. His laughter echoed across the valley below us. Deal. Life continued to evolve in the years that followed. Mom's progress came in fits and starts, some days showing genuine growth, others falling back into old patterns. Dad discovered a newfound confidence that revitalized not just his marriage, but his long-deferred personal interests. Emma and Michael welcomed their first child, making me an aunt to a little girl whose middle name, Sarah, brought tears to my eyes. And I learned perhaps the most valuable lesson of all, that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. That boundaries aren't barriers to love, but foundations for its healthiest expression. And that standing firm in your own worth isn't selfish, it's essential. The journey from that devastating night when my mother said those cruel words, "We all agreed, you're not welcome at the wedding," to where I stand now wasn't direct or easy. It required courage to face painful truths, wisdom to distinguish healthy relationships from toxic ones, and strength to demand the respect I deserved. If you're facing similar family challenges or painful exclusions, remember that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to healing. Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it, and sometimes when the door to reconciliation seems firmly closed, it's actually the first step toward opening a healthier one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to stand up to family manipulation or set difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you find the courage to value yourself when others couldn't see your worth? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Your support means everything as we navigate these complicated human experiences together. Thank you for listening. And remember, your story matters too.